A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of A Side B Side Podcast. What's going on, Adam?
Too much, Brooke. Too much is going on. So I'm excited to slow down for a little bit here and just talk to you and enjoy the afternoon for a little bit.
Before we jump into, there's so much to jump into. A lighthearted way to start the day. I get to make fun of you a little bit.
Yep.
Because you'll have to go onto our socials. Adam sent me some very, very pretty flowers. You haven't actually even seen them yet.
Hey, there was a picture on the website, so.
Oh, okay. Well, see if it's close. But Adam sent me some very pretty flowers because we had a little miscommunication, and he was trying not to be the episode next week. So
yeah, I didn't want to be the subject matter in the future. You see, I just got your picture in the. It's supposed to be a square vase. That is not remotely what I bought.
It's a pretty lovely vase. Leave it alone.
Yeah, that's fair. It's FTD, so like you're gonna get something close, but if I get like, I see my update. Does this even have the right? Okay, kinda. All right. It looks nice.
Yeah, they're very pretty, very vibrant.
That's good. Well, and it's sort of a gloomy day up here. I don't know if you've had all the weird weather down there in this last week. Where we had like hail and stuff up here, and it's like 50 degrees today. So it would be nice to see something bright and vibrant on a day like today.
Yes. We can't. It feels like we just did this because we did, and here we are again. We can't not address what just happened in the nation in Texas, in Uvalde, Texas. 19 children and 2 adults.
And it's so frustrating because you just feel like you're a broken record, you know. This happens every couple of weeks now, every couple of months, and nothing changes. One cool thing that I thought was that I started to see, like, I don't know if you saw the interview with the Golden State Warriors head coach Steve Kerr.
Yes.
So like he just like that was his pregame thing. They were going to ask him a question about the game, and he basically just said, "No, we're not talking about the game." And the level of righteous anger was pretty amazing. And then Dave Roberts, the manager of the LA Dodgers, he also responded about it. And I don't know if it seems different. More and more people are speaking out outside of, you know, the political spectrum, and maybe at some point we'll reach a critical mass and things will change. But it feels like we're just on a record that just keeps that just keeps skipping.
We're in the worst version of Groundhog Day that you can be in, because it's just over and over and over. And I didn't realize that Steve Kerr's father was also a victim of gun violence.
Mm-hmm. A long time ago.
Yeah. When he was in college?
I believe so. I think he was at Arizona when it happened, which would have been, you know, probably the late 80s, early 90s. But it just, hopefully something changes.
What I'm finding so even more frustrating is now all this information coming out about how long authorities, police were outside of this school doing nothing.
Yeah, it does. It is, the information that is being presented is not a comforting. Like, I don't see how anyone can think that this was handled appropriately. And now we're getting all sorts of like different stories and misinformation, and it just looks real horrible.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is, like, the ones that seem to react and be the most efficient and take action in the moment are the poor school kids who have been taught what to do in these situations, and to an extent I think have become almost numb to how insane all of this is. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember we used to do tornado drills. Everyone would go sit in the hallway, get away from the windows, and you put your head down by your knees, you get underneath your desk. We never have active shooter drills. Now it's nothing to them.
That's
and they
their every day.
think about it completely different. Yeah.
I don't understand how people think that this is okay, that the everyday fire drill for us is now an active shooter drill. That is not normal. That is not normal.
And it changes how you see the world. I mean, I know I've talked to my kids about stuff and they view things like a middle schooler should never be like, yeah, when I'm in the room, I look to see what I could use as a weapon to protect myself.
Right.
It's insane. And it's become society, like we built it into the curriculum now. We would rather teach children how to respond to a situation rather than stop the situation from happening, and that's just asinine.
It's and then you look at other countries and they're looking at us like, how do you have school shootings?
Yeah, how is this still happening?
How do you have mass shootings of any kind? Not just
repeated
school shootings. Yeah.
Consistently. Like, I mean, they don't seem to happen as much in the winter, I guess, but I don't know. Maybe the last 2 years with everyone not going out as much, you think it would change? I don't know. It's incredibly discouraging, and it's all the same noise, and people draw their lines and they stand on their side and they yell at the other side and nothing changes. And meanwhile, the kids are in the middle and they're the ones getting hurt.
Well, like we did for Buffalo, and I hate to say any futures, but we will have a link to the GoFundMe to help Uvalde, the school. It's a verified GoFundMe. We'll have that on our website. It's way beyond old and terrible and disgusting. It needs to be
exhausting,
done and fixed, and stop tweeting out your thoughts and prayers as you're accepting millions from these lobbies and the NRA, and fix it.
And you'd think if you had a product that you wanted to protect, you would make sure that people were not using it incorrectly instead of defending the people who are using it incorrectly.
Right.
We figured out, hey, maybe seatbelts are a good idea in cars. We all take off our shoes because one dude 22 years ago tried to make his shoe into a bomb. So now we take our shoes off every time we get on the airport. We're doing it for 22 years because of one guy. And we can't even say, oh, hey, maybe an 18-year-old shouldn't be able to buy a military weapon. So that I thought, honestly, that the most depressing part of my week was going to be the watching This Is Us finale. But reality,
I can't believe you watched it.
I walked in, and one of the cool things about my building is that we have this lobby and there are people that congregate down there, whether it's, the Super Bowl or sporting events or like a live Adele concert or like certain episodes of shows, people get together, and it's way more fun to experience like big social, like cultural events with other people. Mm-hmm. And so I walked in and it was just starting and everybody was sitting there and there was a chair available. And I was like, you know what? I have never watched this show. I've never been all that interested in it, but I really love finales because they can be so good or they can be so bad, but either way, it's going to be something. And having not watched the show, and I guess we're rolling right into the A side here, if you're cool with it.
That's fine.
I had never watched the show. I've heard a lot of it. I know it's one of your favorites, and I was like, okay, we're definitely going to talk about that this week. So I'm going to watch it. I'm going to share it with these people in the lobby as well. And I'll be damned if I didn't know anything about the story, barely anything about the story. Like, I know that it was, there was a family and like Mandy Moore and is it Milo Ventimiglia?
Milo Ventimiglia.
Yeah, what I said. Clearly, it was the same pronunciation there. Same thing. I knew they were in it, but really didn't know that much about the show at all, or how the family, dynamic was, or any of that stuff. But here I am, crying 3 times in the lobby with other people, tearing up because of different moments in the show, and I'm like, I don't even know these characters' names. Like, I was like, well, this is impressive. And I'm sure, if you're into the show, you've already seen it. If you're not into it, probably there'll be some spoilers in here. But I think at this point, if you stumbled upon this podcast and you think there aren't going to be something spoiled, you've made a great mistake. But it was, not knowing anything about the show or the family, they did such a good job of kind of showing the whole thing wrapped up. And I felt like I came in at the very last minute, but understood what was happening. Because they do the whole, like, I got confused because I didn't realize, and I'm assuming this is how it's always been, there's a lot of like time jumps.
Yes.
A lot of flashbacks. And so I remember at some point hearing that his character had died. But then he's there and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I thought this guy had died, but it's like they're jumping around in time. And probably the 2 scenes that got me the most was the 2 boys shaving with dad, which is just such a classical, like, parent fatherhood trope thing. But I mean, I remember I had like, I never got to use a real razor when I was young, but I had a fake razor, that little plastic razor that I would use when my dad was shaving. And my son had a plastic razor when he was like 5 years old that he would use when I was shaving. And it was like one of those cultural touchstone moments. And I thought they did a really great job of, kind of working it all together. And then it is sad, it took me about 20 minutes to figure out that the old people at the funeral were the kids.
Okay.
Because I was coming in late. So
yes.
I thought it was really good. And it did send me on a TV series finale search wormhole for the last couple of days. And I wanted to look at it. There's so many different ways, because I think when I think about season finales or series finales, more often than not, I think about the negative ones. And, like Game of Thrones really felt like they were like, okay, guys, time to wrap it up. And nobody, I don't feel like anybody got the reward that they wanted. And then, of course, there's Sopranos, where it feels like they left in the middle of it. We didn't actually get to see what happened. And then we'll have series finales like for Breaking Bad, where it seems like everything is sewed up, and then they'll do like a movie 2 years later that like adds more to it. It's like, so I wanted to look back at series finales that were kind of like, I know it felt like This Is Us was a big thing on Tuesday, but when I look back at how big some season finales had been and how like everyone was watching, it blew me away. So I went through and I was looking at a lot of different articles online and trying to find, I figured we need a measurement, right? Because everything's so subjective, whether or not it's, a good finale or not. I said, okay, so today we're going to look at the 10 most watched season finales, because this always brings me back to one of my favorite little nuggets that I love about series finales that we'll talk about in a second. Okay. But there are a lot out there that did not make the top 10. There are a lot of lists that say this is the greatest finale, this is the greatest finale, this is the greatest finale. There's a lot of ones that, even if they're considered great, weren't really on the list. And they're between the years, it's also fluctuated. But the top 10 highest rated, so most people watched, and then my favorite metric, the percent of all TVs, the share aspect are. So first we got number 10. And this one I did not realize, but I did remember. So Family Ties, which ended in 1989. At this point, Michael J. Fox is a huge star. He's doing movies. It's just natural that he's going to move on. The show is ending, and it's called Alex Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and he moves away and goes away. He's always kind of fighting with his father. But what I did remember, because I don't remember watching the Family Ties finale, but one of my favorite, because I'm a Michael J. Fox guy, I've watched literally everything the man has done. Even like the bad Vietnam movie and Frighteners, which nobody likes. Just I've seen every one of his movies and most of his shows. But when he was in Spin City and he was leaving Spin City because of his Parkinson's diagnosis, one of the nice little call outs at the end of the finale, which wraps up 2 different series, was that he mentioned he was moving to DC to become a lobbyist, and his first appointment was with Senator Alex P. Keaton.
I remember that.
Yeah, so in the Spin City finale, we find out that Alex B. Keaton has become a senator. And it was like kind of a neat way to tie them both together, which it was the 10th most watched finale of all time. But that reminded me of one that didn't make the top 10 list, which is my favorite finale, I think, of any show that I've ever seen. And that was Newhart, which ended in 1990.
Oh, that was so good.
And Bob Newhart, this is his second run of a sitcom, and he's this, author who lives up in, I think, Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine, running an inn and everything. And he gets hit in the head with a golf ball, and then he wakes up, and he's back in bed with his wife from the Newhart show, which ended years before. It turns out the entire, idea of him owning an inn and that whole story, and Daryl and his other brother Daryl, was all in his head, and it was all a dream, which pops up a lot.
Don't forget Larry.
And Larry. It was Larry, Daryl.
And my other brother Daryl.
It was such a fun show. I loved those guys when I was a kid. I remember watching that with my folks. So it didn't make the top 10, but one of my favorites. Number 9, which was over 42 million people, and that was 17.8% of the U.S. population back in 1979, was a show that I only got to see in reruns. And oddly enough, one that my little brother, liked so much more than me. He would watch it. I'd be like, I don't want to watch this. I'm going to go outside and play basketball or like Legos or something. But he loved All in the Family, which in hindsight, a little kid watching All in the Family is kind of weird. But he was a big Rob Reiner meathead guy for a little bit there. So it was the 9th most watched finale. Of course, All in the Family then spun off both the Jeffersons and Maude, and I think there were 5 characters from the show that went on to do other things, to have other shows. And that's always the fun thing about a lot of finales too. It's the end, but it's not the end. Because a lot of times there's a spinoff. I don't know that there's going to be a spinoff of This Is Us, because it just feel like the show was continuing. But comedies and sitcoms do a much better job of spinning off the characters after the finale. Another one that I remember watching that had over 44.4 million viewers and just under 17.3% of the population. It was in 1992. It is hard now to think of how Bill Cosby was considered before everything that's come out in the last few years. Hindsight definitely changes it, but I remember watching the Cosby Show and loving the show, and I learned so much from it. And they did the spinoff where they had the different world, and we talked about Dwayne Wayne last week as well. So that it's one that I don't, you can't. No station is going to be putting Cosby on syndicated right now. So sadly, I feel like because of the real life actions, the stories and scandal that we've heard, that one is going to kind of fade from the national consciousness, which is sad, because it is
really sad, because the show itself, like you said, was so beautiful and so entertaining. And looking at it from my aspect, it was a show about a beautiful Black family, professional mom, professional dad. It wasn't stereotypical They had these beautiful, intelligent children. I mean, it was your all-American family that happened to be Black.
And it was a
really
cultural moment.
like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair, doesn't get shown enough even, now 30 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got, I would say that like Blackish is probably the like same sort of tone ancestor style.
Right.
But
mainstream wise, yes.
Yeah, mainstream. And like on the mainstream stuff. So it's sad that we've lost the Cosby Show because of the realities. So the number 7 on the list was Magnum PI, which had over 50 million people watch it, which was like 20% of the population. That one, of course, is famous because he figures out that Higgins is actually Robin the entire time. Oops, spoiler alert. Sorry.
Of a 40-year show.
Yeah, 34-year-old show. So I'm sorry. Yeah, Higgins has actually been Robin the whole time. So then, of course, one that was a little bit more recent in 2004 was Friends. They only had 52.5 million people watch it, which feels low because, I mean, it's only 6th on this list. And that, I felt like the Friends bonanza, like people love that show, and it's still out there everywhere. I mean, you'll be on Instagram or TikTok and there's clips just all the time. So I was a little surprised that it wasn't more. And there's a big jump from 6 to 5.
Okay.
Seinfeld, which is often considered a really horrible finale because no one really likes it. And of course, all the characters end up in jail at the end, spoiler alert. But it had 76 million people watch it. So a jump of almost 50% over top 6. One that I did not even imagine was going to be on this list because I forgot it existed as a series before it was a movie. But in 1967, almost 40% of the US population watched the finale of The Fugitive.
Oh.
Which, yeah, that one blew me away. But like 1967, having over 78 million people watching one episode, kind of amazing. One that I remember watching with my folks, and I have a special place in my heart because I actually worked at Cheers for 2 years when I was in Boston, and absolutely love the show. And when at that point, the first season was out on DVD, so we just had it playing on a loop. So I could probably do a one-man show of the entire first season, line by line, because I watched it so many times. They had almost 100 million people, so 93.5 million people, or 36% of the US population, watched the Cheers finale, which of course brought Diane back, and Diane and Sam not getting back together, and then Frasier moving to Seattle, and of course started his own show. And that's actually considered the most successful show and spinoff of all time, because he went on for 11 seasons and won tons of awards as well. Of course, that one seems to have changed because his reputation has taken a hit as well. Another one from the earlier part of the century, in 1977, 100 million people, or almost 46% of the US population, sat down for the finale, or the 7th episode of the miniseries Roots.
Yeah.
Which it's one we watched in school because it was part of our curriculum, but I think I did not realize how big of a cultural thing that was, and how here we are 45 years later, and a good portion of the population should really watch it again, in my humble opinion.
I agree with you.
And of course, then this brings me to our last and the number one show finale in terms of rating that will never be broken, and had more people. It was the number one rated live event until the 2010 Super Bowl. So numbers putting up the Super Bowl, 53.5% of all US population, 125 million people. So, a quarter more than second place was the MASH Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, the finale to the series of MASH. And that will never be touched. I remember when I was a kid and Cheers was coming up on their final episode, and I was listening to the radio in the morning, and they were talking about, will Cheers be able to top the number? And the number is so big. That's just, part of it is there wasn't as much to watch. There wasn't cable TV as well, as wide. We didn't have all the streaming services. There were less options. But to have a audience as big as the Super Bowl for one single series finale is pretty amazing and still one of my favorite facts. I mean, 1 out of every 2 people in the country was watching that one show. We can't do that. We can't get 1 out of every 2 people to vote. We
You know
can't get
what's
one out of
really
every.
funny about that show too is the show lasted like 3 times longer than the war that it was depicting.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, the articles, some articles I said that I read said that it was an important social time because it helped, by talking about the Korean War, it helped people deal with Vietnam, which that felt overly simplistic because I don't really feel like we've dealt with Vietnam. And I'm as a kid, I remember thinking that they were in Vietnam when I was watching MASH until I figured out it was in Korea, because Korea is often called the Forgotten War because we just don't really talk about it. But amazing that 1 out of every 2 people had watched it. I am curious to see what the ratings will be for Tuesday night's This Is Us finale. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near these top 10 numbers just because there's so much competition. But it's always hard to know. Like, there were 10 of us in the lobby watching one TV. So how does Nielsen know how many people are truly watching? Right. Especially when you've got groups together and stuff. But I'll be interested to see if it gets anywhere near the numbers. It was enjoyable. I don't want to go back and watch the rest of the series because I know it's going to make me cry, because it made me cry without knowing anything about the characters. Just drop it in the finale moment and getting all teary-eyed. So very impressed by This Is Us. I knew it was good, just not my jam from a emotional standpoint, but hopefully we'll be able to have some finales in the future that have cultural significance almost as much as MASH, but that will never be touched. It's like Joe DiMaggio's 56 game hit streak, the UCLA winning like 10 out of 11 basketball championships, just not ever going to be touched again. And the fact that 1 out of every 2 people was watching it, weird would it been to have been one of the 2 people that wasn't watching it, and then the next day everybody's talking about it and you're like, oh man, I had to work, or I went to bed early. That feels like something that most people have probably said they've seen it. Like, any sporting event, when there are a number of people that say they were there, it's always like 5 times as big as the stadium. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that had to pretend the next day that they'd watched MASH because they were completely out of the loop.
So, quick side note before you wrap up the A side, because you mentioned Seinfeld, and there is a Seinfeld coffee. Well, actually, it's 4. It's like a pack. It's a 4-pack of Seinfeld inspired coffee. Each character basically has their own inspired coffee flavor. Yeah.
The amount of things that they have created to connect with these shows, and I thought it was dangerous because when I started down this project, I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to focus because there's so many finales. Like, when I look at some of the best lists, like Angel was on there on one list and Buffy was on there, and I'm like, wow, I got to mention those because those are definitely ones that Brooke probably watched in the moment, if not multiple times.
Yes.
I mean, Battlestar Galactica was one of those where it ticked people off. Quantum Leap, I did not find out any of these lists, which was weird to me because that was such a huge finale when I was a kid watching it and trying to figure out everything, and how he never really got home and how that was kind of a buzzkill. And then the Star Trek The Next Generation finale, which was just outside of the top 10. It only had about like 30 million viewers. But I remember that one, how it kind of wrapped everything back to the beginning with Q and Picard, and how that was a big deal. But of course, then they've had a million movies and things since then, so they couldn't really wrap it up. But it's really cool to see, but it's dangerous when you go down these black holes because you get swallowed up and lose a couple days.
I'm impressed with that list. I mean, I can't really disagree with it number wise, but I mean, show wise itself, I think it's a pretty good list.
Yeah, I mean, they're all huge shows for the time. I had no idea that The Fugitive was as big a deal as it was.
I didn't either, but I knew it was a big deal when the Tommy Lee Jones version came out, and they were talking about, they referenced it. So I knew it was a big deal. I didn't know it was that big of a deal.
Yeah, I knew it was I thought it was on kind of like the Mission Impossible level. Like, people liked it, but to have for a long time to have one of the, until So they were the top. That was the highest rated finale from 1967 to 1977, and it's still in the top 10 45 years later. I had no idea it was that big a
deal. Yeah. All right.
And that is the A side. Oh, I also because I was in trouble yesterday because we had miscommunication, and we were not able to record at our normal time. So then I stumbled upon a show to try to I always watch like White Collar and Leverage. They're my comfort shows, and Castle and that sort of thing. But I rewatched The Proposal last night.
Oh my!
Which was so ridiculously weird. Like here I'm watching like a date movie from 2005 with an impossibly young Ryan Reynolds. He looks so young in that movie, but it was really enjoyable. I forgot how like the rest of the cast of that movie is really good. Betty White's in there, Mary Steenburgen, Craig T. Nelson, even Madeline
Stowe?
No, Madeline Achik. Aiken. I never pronounce her name correctly because I don't pronounce things correctly, but a lot of fun and definitely worth a watch if you find it on your streaming service.
All right, so is that the A side?
That is the A side. So go enjoy some series finales, and if you're in a bad mood, watching Sandra Bullock will probably put you in a much better.
I just want to say real fast, since This Is Us that kind of put you in this rabbit hole. The fact that you could appreciate and get into the characters based on one episode. Yeah, imagine watching 6 full seasons of that.
That's why I didn't want. That's why I'm not going to go back and do it. I do not have the emotional fuel to get through that. I know that that if I had learned more about the characters or had gone through what is that 20 episodes for 6 years, that would have been a lot. Man, 6 years. That is a long. Imagine how much has changed in the last 6 years.
And I think
like that started, was Obama still in office?
Yes, I think so. Yes,
that's crazy. Think about that.
Was getting out of office.
Yeah, it was like that would have been probably the fall of 2016.
Yeah. So yeah. And one of my favorite parts, and the parts for me that kind of, there was 2, the hay, you get the reference if you saw it, the hay, the first hay, and then the last hay, and then the 3 when they said, and then Dad said, or along came me, and Dad said, we, and that, big 3. That of course has been the consistent theme throughout the 6 years. But
and I had no idea. Like that's literally one of the moments when I figured it out. I was like trying to figure out which character was which, and like and then when they did that whole thing, I was like, oh, these 3 are the kids. Okay, and it was impressive. But I'm guessing that's kind of their nonstop saying.
Yes, that's what that was their constant, like, hey, we are these triplets, we're family,
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful show. Like, it was one of my favorites. I've actually thought of going to like start it all over again, because it has been 6 years and so many things have happened in that season. So those writers, I follow them on Twitter. They're amazing. I mean, and they genuinely, you can tell this was a passion project for them. So,
well, it definitely seems like all of the actors, this was a big part. This was a huge thing in their lives. The fact that 6 years ago, the idea of a dramedy starring Mandy Moore.
Yeah, right.
Like this is like bubblegum pop. I remember that's one of the first things when I heard this was happening. I'm like, what? Mandy Moore is playing, like, she's doing like dramedy, like heavy stuff now.
And I got to tell you, she killed it.
Like, oh yeah.
If you had told me 6 years ago that I would be this impressed and attached to freaking Mandy Moore, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
And the trust that the writers put in all the characters, but she had the one who had the, like, she played she was in both the past and the present, Everybody else was was played by different actors, or because Milo was never in the future,
right,
or present day. So she was the one who really was the thread that held it all together, which makes sense because that's often moms are the ones that kind of hold everything together. But was there another husband at one point?
Yes, Miguel.
Okay, because there were people I was watching it with were like, wow, we just forgot about Miguel. I was like,
well,
who's Miguel? What?
And even Miguel kind of knew that he was second fiddle to Jack always. It wasn't like he ever came in and was like, I'm gonna be better than Jack. He kind of knew he was Jack's best friend, and he knew what the two of them had. So it was never like he was trying to replace him. He just filled a void, I guess, and not in like a negative way. Like she did love him, but
yeah. I mean, it's just an interesting challenge for the writers is like, you want to be able to show those two love stories, but then obviously the most narrative connection is the two of them back together,
right?
And it was funny when somebody was like, well, guess we just forgot about Miguel. It's like, oh.
And we didn't forget about Miguel. We saw Miguel, like, there was you missed it, but like last week leading up to this, there was like a whole trains were a big deal for her, and so there was this whole like train theme, and throughout parts of her life she saw different people in different cars, and he was in one of the cars. We didn't forget about him. Chill out.
I'm cool. I just thought it was funny because I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. One of my neighbors was a little miffed that it didn't feel like that Miguel got a good send off. So.
Miguel got an entire episode. He got an amazing send off.
Well, there you go. And he's good. He's good. Like I said, I came in very late. You can't really come in later than I did. So.
All right. Is that the A side?
That's the A side.
So, of course, switching gears like we do. Mine's not all laughy, emotional happiness. But we know that because
yeah, that's the flip side.
That's the flip side.
We do a little bit of both. Sides.
Yeah. So this week we talk about someone who terrorized Baton Rouge for about a 10-year span.
10 years?
From the mid 90s to the mid 2000s.
Oh, so this is a recent one. So this will make me even more uncomfortable.
This week we are talking about Sean Vincent Gillis. So Sean was born on June 24th of 1962 in Baton Rouge. And he was raised in Louisiana his whole life. He was the son of Yvonne and Norman Gillis. His father, who suffered from mental illness and alcoholism, actually left the family shortly after Sean was born. It's been reported that he actually checked himself into several different institutions. So Sean was raised by his mom and his grandparents. His mom actually worked for a TV station. She recalled her son being a really good kid with average grades. Are there many parents, though, that are like, my kid was a horrible kid?
Yeah, no, I don't. It doesn't look good on the folks to be like, I mean, occasionally we'll hear it. Like the parents will be like, he was evil Eden. We couldn't deal with him. So, but most of the time it's like, no, he was nice. He was quiet.
I mean, even Ted Bundy's parents were like, his mom was like, no, Teddy was a great kid. And I was like,
Well, and I think it's hard too for parents to accept sometimes that their kid may be a monster. I mean, we saw with just this last winter with the Brian, they went camping and she disappeared, and then his parents basically like his parents basically covered for him for like as long as they could until he went in like offed himself in a swamp or something.
Yeah.
It's hard for parents to accept, I think.
So Sean starts to develop or show a more violent side of his personality as he gets older, especially during, his teen adolescent years. And he starts just getting angrier and angrier. One neighbor named Carolyn Clay says that she one time heard a loud banging at like 3:00 in the morning, and she saw him in his front yard just mercilessly beating on some garbage cans. She also said that he was prone to fits of anger like that. Like that wasn't the first time. That's just one instance. She said he was an angry young boy. So by the age of 17, he starts getting a rap sheet with some minor infractions. After high school, he attends community college for a little bit, and he has several low-paying jobs while he's still living with his mother. He did reunite with his father for a bit after high school, but the relationship became problematic because he found out that his father was gay. So like I said, his rap sheet starts about 1980 when he's 17. And throughout the years, he's arrested for multiple different reasons, like traffic citations. He's got a DUI or two, possession of marijuana. And then he's got like a contempt of court charge. And this goes on for off and on for years. Finally, when he hits about 30, his mom, remember, who's in television, moves to Atlanta for a job. Now he's 30 years old, been living with his mom this whole time. He's got issues, already had some issues. Well, he gets kind of pissed off at his mom. For moving. He's lonely. He becomes obsessed with pornography. He's still flitting around from low-paying job to low-paying job. His mom, who moves to better herself, sends him money. Doesn't matter to him, doesn't help. He's still pissed at her for leaving. I mean, right. Even though he's 30, right. I mean, like she couldn't have a life or anything. He unleashes his anger by screaming into the sky and hitting garbage cans. Hence, like the neighbor had reported.
Right.
He did, however, manage to get a certification on computers after graduating from community college. In 1992, he's caught peeking into a neighbor's window, and somehow, despite his anger issues and his porn obsession, he is able to get a girlfriend, and they begin dating.
Wow. Yes, there's somebody for everybody.
Apparently, yeah. He's got his girlfriend, he's got his anger issues, he's got his obsession. We know that he's got his loneliness and all of this. Swirl it all up, mix it all up, and we have his first murder, which he commits in 1994, is of 81-year-old Anne Bryan in March of 1994. He claims he only intended to rape her, but he got frightened when she screamed as he touched her. So to stop her from screaming, he slit her throat, almost decapitating her. And then he stabs her 50 times.
Good Lord.
Because he only wanted to rape her, but he got scared. He leaves her body at her residence at St. James Place, which is like a really, really nice retirement home in Baton Rouge. These stab wounds were concentrated on her head, her chest, and her genitals. His obsession leads him to, his pornography obsession leads him to sites that depict rape, death, dismemberment. He once even showed his wife, Terry, a photo of a deceased woman, but she brushes it off.
It's a weird thing to brush off.
Yeah.
Can't be real easy to brush off. It's not like, oh, that's weird.
Right.
There's a bunch of stuff out there. Stuff goes viral and you can check it out, but this seems a little bit more and disturbing and concerning.
Quite a bit more. So in 1999, in May, he starts stalking a woman that he had seen jogging in the south area of Baton Rouge. He stalks her for 3 weeks. He's driving around looking for her. Finally, about 5:30 in the morning on May 30th of 1999, it's a Sunday, he sees her. 52-year-old Hardy Schmidt. She's jogging. 2 days later, her body is found in a bayou in St. James Parish. Sean Gillis confesses later that he had actually hit her with his car and knocks her into a ditch. He then got out and put a wire wrap tightly around her and forced her into the car. He drives her off to another area where he rapes her and then kills her. After her murder, he puts her undressed body into the trunk of his car, which was a white Chevy Cavalier. And then he leaves it in the car for 2 days and then dumps it.
So in Louisiana.
In Louisiana. In May.
In May.
Yes.
You got to feel like somebody smelled something.
Seriously. So that was in May of 1999, and he would continue for 5 more years. He would sometimes drop his victims off or chop off his victims' hands and feet. He'd sometimes carve off their tattoos. Getting even worse, he would sometimes save body parts as trophies. And he was a necrophiliac. He once even showered with a victim's body. So, of course, his murders are unsolved until a man named Derek Lee Todd is apprehended in May of 2003.
Okay.
So investigators are looking at Derek Lee Todd, who happened to be another serial killer in the area at the time. And they're looking at him and they're able to link some murders to him. But then they're like, wait, these don't actually fit his profile. We had another serial killer.
No, that's got to be a horrible realization. Like having one is bad enough, but you're like, right. Oh, great, we got 2.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the last victim that actually gets him in trouble. Her name is Donna Bennett Johnston. She's 43 years old. She's his 8th and final victim in February of 2004. He rapes her with a nylon tie wrap and strangles her. And then, as he had done with other victims, he completely mutilates her body. It's so graphic. I'm not going to say everything that he does because it's so graphic.
Yeah.
He cuts off body parts. He cuts off a tattoo. Again, it's graphic. And then he actually takes photos of her after everything he's done to her.
It's probably as a trophy style something.
Mm-hmm. So there's letters, her body, he dumps her body in a drainage canal near Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge. Now remember, Donna Bennett Johnston is his 8th and final victim, and her body, like I said, was dumped near a canal. And there were tire tracks that are found around her body, and those tire tracks are how they were able to trace it back to Sean Vincent Gillis. The tracks were from a very unique set of tires, and so the Louisiana State Crime Lab was able to determine the brand, model, and type of tire. And then from there, they were able to further narrow it down because this one type of tire was only manufactured for a 3-year period that ended in 2003. And of all those tires that were made, only 90 of them had been made in the Baton Rouge area.
So when you see this stuff on TV shows and movies, they're like, yeah, we tracked it by the tires. And it always feels like, really, can they? But it's reality. They can do it. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. So they're able to get a DNA sample from Sean Vincent Gillis, and they match it to some of the evidence found on victims' bodies, and he is arrested. Of course, it's a match, and he's arrested April 29th of 2004. He's charged with various crimes. Of course, murder. Initially, he was charged for the murder of Catherine Hall, Johnny Mae Williams, and Donna Bennett Johnston. Well, while he's in jail, he starts writing a longtime friend of Donna Bennett Johnston. Her name is Tammy Perpera. They become pen pals. They're exchanging letters. Like in one letter, he even tells Tammy about Donna Bennett's murder. He says she was so drunk it only took a minute and a half to succumb to unconsciousness and then death. Honestly, her last words were, "I can't breathe. I still puzzle over the post-mortem dismemberment and cutting. There must be something deep in my subconscious that really needs that kind of macabre action."
What? This is her friend.
This is her friend. Yes. So now remember, he's arrested. He's in jail while they're writing because he's arrested in 2004. Well, they don't communicate long because unfortunately Tammy passes away from complications of AIDS in 2005. But before she does, she turns these letters over to prosecutors and they are able to use them against him in his trial.
Absolutely. He's basically confessing left and right.
Mm-hmm. So again, he stands trial July 21st of 2008, and he's found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The previous year, he actually pled guilty to second-degree murder and was convicted of the killing of 36-year-old Joyce Williams. He's incarcerated at Louisiana State Prison in the Feliciana Parish. So, of course, a lot of times cases like this make it into television shows and documentaries and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, Investigation Discovery discussed Sean Vincent Gillis in the series called The Devil You Know. The episode is called A Twisted Mind. There was also another Investigation Discovery series called Dead of Night, and the episode that features Sean Vincent Gillis is called Graveyard Shift. Criminal Confessions aired an episode about him and talked about his confession in 2017. In 2018, CBS had a TV show called Evidence of Evil, and it made 2 episodes, one about him and one about Derek Lee Todd, who was the other serial killer active in Louisiana at the same time as him.
Who was the one where the cops went, oh, wait, this doesn't fit. We must have 2.
Uh-huh. He was also the subject of an investigation discovery series called Signs of a Psychopath. It was season 3, episode 3, Do Her Mortal Harm, which aired September of 2021. And there was a TV show called Mark of a Killer, and he was featured in the episode named The Monster in 2022, so this year.
Goodness. I mean, it should be of no surprise to us who do a podcast about murder and true crime, but the appetite and interest and just how much desire there is for people to look at these stories. It's just like that we have this many shows about one guy. Mm-hmm. Is sometimes it still blows me away. You wonder if there's a chicken or the egg scenario there.
Right. So I did tell you, like I did mention, he is still currently incarcerated, and it has been reported that he has expressed remorse for his crimes. Whether that is true and verifiable, I don't know.
Yeah, because you sure didn't sound like he was remorseful in the letters to Tammy. So,
I mean, how do you write to somebody's longtime friend and describe what you did to them like that?
How do you even get the address? What, like you saw it on a witness list? It was like, oh, that sounds like a nice name. I should write her a letter.
I mean, and the fact that I can get why you want answers. So I'm sure that's why she continued to exchange them, and she was able to use them as evidence. But initially, how do you bring yourself to even write back?
Yeah, you have to hope that she was doing it almost as a private detective trying to get as much info. Like, this is an opportunity, and this is how I will, help put this guy away. Yeah, but it's a weird thing to do. We've heard of a lot of weird relationships involving serial killers in our 94 episodes. That is unique, though, that he writes and communicates back and forth pen pals with one of his victims' friends. That in and of itself is a unique circumstance after all of these different things we've heard.
I do love the fact that they were able to track him down, like you said, because it sounds like such a TV show. They were like, oh, these tires, and only 90 of these tires were in Louisiana, and this fits a certain make and model, and they were able to track it to him like that. I think that's really cool.
It feels very much like a plot from a TV show, like something I would see on NCIS. That
right.
It feels a little like, oh, that's too convenient, but sometimes you got to use what you can use. I mean, we had to use tax law to get Capone, so if it takes tires to get this guy, that's okay too.
Yeah, they use taxes to get R. Kelly too, so
taxes will get you.
There's something about criminals and taxes, so
well, I mean, taxes is just hard. I know you've seen the meme where it's like, hey, the government, we need you to pay us some money about all your income, and you're like, oh, hey, cool, government, tell me how much. You're like, no, we can't tell you that.
Right.
But if we're wrong, because we know the number, but we won't tell you the number. But if you don't guess the number right, then you're going to jail. It's like, how is this a system? Can you imagine you go to the grocery store and like they ring up everything, but you can't see the register. It just says guess. Right. And if you're wrong, you go to jail.
There'd be a lot of hungry people because a lot of people getting like with calculators, and I mean it's just
I'd buy one thing at a time.
Yeah, basically. We're gonna be here for a while, so
it's gonna be a bit. So
but anyway, there you go. That is the story of Sean Vincent Gillis, and that is the B-side this week.
But at least he's in jail. I mean, I would feel a lot more comfortable if he was no longer upon this plane of existence, but at least he's in jail. But I love New Orleans in Louisiana. I did not realize that at one point they had like multiple serial killers running around Louisiana. So.
That is, but then again, is it surprising because it's Louisiana?
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed my time there, but I also haven't, it's hot. Heat makes people crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I still don't understand why he could have that body in his trunk for 2 days and nobody noticed.
Right. Yeah,
but he got caught and he's in jail and he is the strangest pen pal story in the world.
But there you go. That's the B-side. Again, on our website, all our sources, links and everything, and also the GoFundMe for Uvalde, the Rod Elementary School in Uvalde. There is a verified GoFundMe, and that is on our website as well.
And I really hope that we don't have to talk about something like that anytime soon. It feels like every week right now, and it's got to stop.
Well, you know the drill. Website.
A-side, B-side podcast at where.site or asidebsidepodcast.com. You can go to that website. You can get all of our links to whichever platform you would like to listen to it on. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, any of those. We're also on YouTube. It's always fun to look at the numbers and see how things stack up. Still, iTunes is leading and iPhones are leading. So that's kind of fun for me from a stats nerd. So thank you for providing that. You could also buy Brooke a coffee at buymeacoffee.com and type in A-side, B-side podcast. I cannot get her flowers every week, but she does a lot worthy of flowers every week. And if we do coffee every now and then, that'll definitely cut down on my florist budget, which will get a little out of control at some point. Again, we're on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, MySpace. I've still got my live journal out there. So lots of resources for you. Our website also has all of the merchandise that you can get, especially now in this weird summer weather. If you want to get a hoodie because it gets hot, cold, especially if you live anywhere south of like Iowa. For some reason, everybody in every store in the world decides that their AC should be at 55 degrees. So you walk in and you immediately need a jacket, or a hoodie. So we got some nice hoodies there and blankets and whatnot as well. So thank you for supporting the show. It's fun, like I said, to look at the stats every week and to see how many people are listening. And hopefully next week we will have less heavy stuff to talk about, and but still murder and death and all that.
Besides the true crime part of it.
Yeah, true crime part. Yeah. But let's not have any more new crimes.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.